Thank you.
All right, so can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so of course, welcome back to Shady Bluff Senior Living. We're going to go through some of the new cast of characters that have recently been introduced and created by our residents. So the first we have is Percival Beauregard. Percival is 79, widowed, smitten and smarter than he looks. He has one son and one daughter. He's short, bald, and a little overweight. He has a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. He's not always particular about his clothing or the statism, preferring to be comfortable, and he sometimes forgets to comb what little hair he has left. So Percival is almost too nice and eager to please once you get to know him, but he's also a bit gruff to those who don't know him, and he doesn't trust people easily. He's a retired police officer, so he always has this sense of wanting to save the day and be the hero. His idea of romantic wooing is turning up the machismo, which unfortunately doesn't have the desired effect on his unrequited love, Cordelia. So Percival, his main goal in the story is for Cordelia to fall madly in love with him and for everyone in the community to see him as the hero he knows he is, someone that they can look up to and rely on. Percival does have a secret, though, that no one at the community knows. He's actually been pulled from retirement. His relocation to Shady Bluff is part of an undercover assignment. He's also been having some issues with remembering things correctly, and sometimes he forgets he's undercover, which may be an issue later. We also met Tina Testament. She's 80, married, brilliant, but arrogant. So she is married to fellow resident Patrick Joni. She has a son, although they're estranged. Tina was once a fiery redhead, but her hair is now gray. However, she still has some streaks of red that never faded and which give her a very dramatic look. Her eyes are bright green, like a cat's, and she has a few freckles. She's thin, wiry, and has a gleam in her eye that lets you know she's one step ahead of you. Tina loves a puzzle. She's one of the smartest people you'll meet, which can annoy her friends and make everyone else very nervous. She can also be a bit sneaky in the way she goes about things, and many people claim she's a cheater, but she's not. She's just smarter than you. Tina is money-driven. She's determined to win her son's love back and imagines a reconciliation where she surprises him with news of a very large inheritance. She also wants her son to accept her wife, Patricia, and promise to take care of her after Tina's gone. Growing up in a time where she had to suppress who she really was, Tina had to figure out a way to take care of herself and Patricia, even if it meant putting a stop to whoever got in her way. We also met Herman Usurpera, the Human Resources Director. He's sly but charming, has twin 18-year-old daughters. He's very handsome. He's a heartthrob of sorts. He dresses well, he has an athletic build. He can be a bit of a flirt. He's always busy, 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 but takes time to treat both residents and employees like they're his first priority. Herman loves a challenge and feeling like he won. Even though he doesn't think Regina Inkler, the executive director, is necessarily a good person, he has his heart set on winning hers. With his office right next to her, he knows more about Regina than she realizes. He believes he can save her. Herman has a secret, like almost everyone at Shady Bluff, which is that his wife passed mysteriously in her sleep and he had her cremated the next day. At her memorial service, many people thought he was a little too poised and content in his mannerisms. It's a little suspicious. We also met Countess Lily Rose, 60, married to the Count, Dandy Carruthers, and scary. She wears a bun as severe as her countenance. She's always dressed like she's going to a ball, lots of jewelry, lots of makeup. She's almost always wearing a pair of dark sunglasses, even inside. Woe to those she takes them off for. Her withering gaze is rivaled only by Medusa. The Countess is proper, poised, and hyper-aware of her reputation. She's also demanding and snobbish. No matter the circumstance, she always carries herself with dignity. The Countess's end goal is to get her husband back at all costs, but not out of love. They both know too many of the other secrets to ever part, except in death. Like the Count, Lily Rose's secrets remain a mystery to us, for now. And then the final character we met last reading was Jimmy Still, 21, single, hunky, but kind of dumb. So to quote Mae West, although we can't verify that she actually said this, what a hunk. Jimmy is blonde with eyes as blue as a clear lake on a spring morning, muscular from hours spent working out and working the land, and always seen with a ball cap on, which is a shame since his hair is so thick and lustrous. So Jimmy is an all-American guy, low-key, loves sports, just wants to stay out of trouble. Unfortunately, he's also very easy to manipulate, which has gotten him into some serious trouble. His main goal is just to get out of the mess he's in, although that will be a very hard endeavor. So Jimmy's biggest secret is that he's not really Jimmy Steele at all. He's actually Brexton Inkler, Regina's son. Brexton, with the help of the Countess, Count Dandy's wife, escaped from prison, a decision he will soon come to regret. He's promised to help the Countess learn the secrets of her husband. This also means that Regina, the executive director, is indebted to the Countess, even though she's in love with the Count. All right, so previously on The Old and the Beautiful, when Cordelia went back to the tulip bed where she had found the note warning that something bad was going to happen at midnight on Friday, Cordelia ran into Percival Beauregard, a retired police officer who's madly in love with her. While dodging his advances, she does learn that Chef Maxime, who was murdered by being drowned in a pot of tomato soup, was accused of poisoning her coworkers at her last job. While Cordelia and Percival are discussing the chef's shady past, Executive Director Regina Inkler is caught on a mysterious phone call by Count Dandy. Did he hear Regina talking about him? But it turns out the Count's there on personal business. They are secret lovers and agree to meet that night at a seedy motel. But after the Count visits Regina, he makes a beeline for Millicent's room, where he makes her quickly throw back a couple of strong drinks with his secret recipe. They seem to have an odd effect on Millicent, who tells him of strange green lights and UFOs seen above the community. The next morning, Regina Inkler has not shown up for work. No one knows she was meeting the Count at the hotel the night before. Cordelia sees the Count drive away, though, and she takes the opportunity to break into his room for a little investigation. Unfortunately, she's interrupted and hides in the closet as two people enter, the handsome lawn boy, Jimmy Steele, and a beautiful but severe woman, the Count's wife, Countess Lily Rose. Jimmy is not the squeaky clean hunk everyone in the community seems to think. The Countess helped him escape from the prison. He's working with the Countess, who is determined to learn of a secret Millicent is hiding, something she can use to her advantage. Okay. And that is where we ended up, episode 10.
Take it away, Miss Donna Birdsong.
Episode 11. Percival rode the elevator back to the main floor. Decades on the police force had given him a very keen sense of danger, and right now alarm bells were ringing very loudly in his head. Chef Maxime was dead. Regina Inkler hadn't shown up for work, and Cordelia's flowers had been burned in the shape of a body. It didn't seem a coincidence that after Pippi showed Cordelia the damage, Jimmy suddenly turns up to dig them up. Poor Jimmy. What a dumb kid, thought Percival. To break out of prison only to return to Chance County, to be near his mother, Percival assumed. The only reason he hadn't turned in Jimmy, aka Brexton Inkler, was because he was certain Jimmy might come in useful later. What no one knew at Shady Bluff was that Percival, while technically retired, had agreed to move into the community at the request of the county commissioner, who was certain that something bad was going on here. Black SUVs seen pulling up at the employee entrance at the middle of the night. The strange green glow that some folks in town had reported seeing around the community and perfect eclipse. Percival didn't know how all of it connected with the chef's murder and the sudden appearance of the Count and now the Count's wife, but he was sure it was connected somehow. Percival arrived at the HR director's office and knocked on the door. Herman was sitting at his desk, fingers smashing away at the keyboard. Herman looked up and smiled. A genuine smile, Percival knew, not the smarmy, flirty one he put on for most of the ladies. How they didn't see through that, Percival wasn't sure, but he figured it might have something to do with how handsome Herman was. Percival felt a pang of jealousy. He'd seen how Cordelia blushed when she spoke to Herman. He fervently wished just once that Cordelia would look at him that way. "What's up, Percival?" Herman asked. "You missed all the drama with Her Highness," Percival said, taking a seat in front of the desk. "Count's wife made a very grand entrance." "So Pippi said. It took us quite a while to get Rebecca calmed down. I'm guessing you left her up in the Count's apartment?" "Yes, let's hope she stays there, or you might have a mass exodus of residents on your hands. She doesn't seem like the type who wants to make friends," Percival said, chuckling. "Was there something I could do for you? I'm happy to talk, but as you can see, I'm a bit busy," Herman said, indicating the mounds of paperwork on his desk. "I won't keep you long," Percival said. "I was just wondering if we could maybe say a few words in Chef Brulee's honor today. Maybe call everyone to the bakery at the end of the morning." Herman nodded, and Percival was surprised to see tears in the man's eyes. "That's very good of you, Percival," he said, then cleared his throat. "Please forgive me. It's been a bit hard. I keep wondering." "Wondering what?" "If there was something I should have done, if I could have protected her in some way." "How so? From what I hear, Chef Maxime didn't have any enemies." Percival lied. He knew that there were rumors Chef Maxime had poisoned her previous employer. "Percival, I know I shouldn't tell you this, but I need to confide in somebody. And it seems so many people have an agenda here. Everybody's hiding something. But you, a retired cop, well, I can't help but feel you tell it like it is without any tricks or games." Percival shifted in his chair, feeling a little guilty for his lie about the chef. "Maxine and I were having an affair. Back when I was married, before my wife, well, you know," Herman said, before, sometimes Maxine would get so nervous, especially when we were out in public. I just assumed it was because she didn't want us to get caught. After my wife died, I felt so guilty for being unfaithful that I cut things off with Maxine. But then she got, well, obsessed. She called me up one night claiming she'd cut herself and needed me to come take her to the hospital. But when I got there, she was fine. She started calling my phone at all hours and leaving messages." Percival studied Herman as he talked. He had spent years getting confessions out of the bad guys. His secret was just to sit there and listen. Most people wanted to talk if you were quiet enough, open enough to what they had to say. And then, the night before she died, she called me, told me that she was afraid something was going to happen to her. She said she had noticed that I was falling in love with Regina, but that Regina wasn't to be trusted. Then she said that she knew about Regina's secret, had proof, something about the Count. But by then, she was getting herself worked up. I thought she was lying. Chef Maxine getting worked up? She always seemed so cool and reserved, Percival said. Yes, most of the time she was, but no one knew her like I knew her. She was so passionate at times, in many ways. And that night, well, all of her energy was focused on making me believe that she was in a lot of danger. But I didn't believe her. So I hung up on her. And then the next day, she was dead. Herman covered his face with his hands. He took several deep breaths, then brought his hands down and looked at Percival. Oh, I'm so sorry, Percival. I shouldn't burden you with all of this. It's not professional. Oh, forget professionalism, Herman. We're friends, right? Percival asked. Herman nodded. Did she say anything else? Tell you what kind of proof? Or where she might have kept it? Herman thought a moment. She said something about documentation in the hospital. And then she said if Regina had have paid up when she had the chance, Maxine wouldn't even be there, wouldn't even be here. She was trying to get money from Regina, Percival said. But why? What would Regina want to hide so badly that Maxine was blackmailing her? I don't know, Percival, but she did say one more thing that I didn't remember until now. Percival leaned forward. She said, Herman said, Millicent should have known better. If something happens to me, she should watch out. Percival sat back, stunned. Millicent? How was she wrapped up in all of that? This to be continued.
Excuse me. Episode 12. With Regina still AWOL, Pippi decided to take charge of running the day's operations. Lord knows Herman was just hiding in his office all day, pretending to do payroll, she thought. After the front desk had calmed down from the Countess's arrival, Pippi made her way back to the wellness office. If Shady Bluff was getting a new, unexpected resident, the Countess would need to have a care assessment just like everyone else. But a pang of pity for the wellness director, Mallory Practice. There was no way that haughty thing like Mal or a nurse asking her personal questions. As she neared the wellness director's office, she heard the director talking to herself. Mal was pacing around her desk, every other step punctuated by her limp. What can it mean? Mal was muttering. Pippi stepped forward and knocked on the door jamb. Mal, hey, is everything all right? Mal looked up. For a moment, her face was fearful, but then she gave Pippi a small smile. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going crazy, Pippi, she said, or someone's trying to drive me there. Why? What's going on? Mal sat in her office chair. Her shoulders slumped and she opened a drawer. Pippi could see that it was full of little pieces of paper. Mal grabbed a handful and tossed them on the desk. I've been getting these notes ever since Richard died, right before any special occasion that we used to share. Birthdays, holidays, our anniversary, things like that. Someone's been leaving me notes. But on this year's anniversary of Richard's accident, nothing came. May I? Pippi asked. She reached out and plucked a note, read it, then picked up another. She slowly went through all of the notes on the desk. They were all strange and vaguely sinister. Roses are red, violets are blue. You killed your husband. Will it kill you? And cash that check or you'll regret the day. You cut the brake line, I have to say. And the payoff is fat, my greed is too. You'll cash that check if you know what's good for you. Have you gone to the police? Pippi asked. I did at first, but they couldn't trace where they were from. And after a couple of years passed and nothing happened. Oh, Mal, I'm so sorry. Do you have any idea who might have sent you these? I wasn't sure, but now I think I do. I couldn't believe it at first, but the other night when I went to help Cordelia after she fell in the garden, well, as I was helping her up, I saw her put a piece of paper in her pocket. It bothered me for a reason I couldn't quite put my finger on initially. But then she said something that I can now only attribute as being quite sinister. He asked me about Thursday, which was the anniversary of my husband's death. How is that sinister? Pippi asked. Cordelia's always so good about remembering things. She was surely just worried about you. Yeah, that's what I assumed too. But then I thought back to that piece of paper she had clutched in her hand. It was a particular shade of cornflower, not very common in stationery. Mal extended her hand, gesturing toward the notes on the desk. But as you can see, whoever has been sending me these notes uses the same kind. Pippi gasped, realizing what Mal was suggesting. Mal, noting that Pippi was on the same wavelength as her, nodded her head. Yes, I think these notes and threats have been coming from our favorite resident, Cordelia Buttons. To be continued.
Episode 13. Should I do anything? I guess go ahead. Tina and her wife, Joni, knocked on Millicent's door. It was 8:30 a.m. and Joni had suggested she should invite Millicent to breakfast to smooth out their argument at yesterday's cribbage game. You're right, of course, Tina said, and it would be nice to see what she's hiding. Don't say such things about your friends, Tina, chided Joni, who always believed the best of everyone. There has to be a reasonable explanation. I'm sure she'll tell us. When Millicent opened the door, she looked completely out of sorts. They had never seen Millicent without her makeup, perfect hair, and impeccable fashion. So they both stared aghast at her now. I must look something awful the way you two are gaping at me, Millicent said. You just look a little tired is all, said Joni. Are you not feeling well? Oh, I'm doing all right. Just have a little headache. Millicent, seeing that Tina and Joni weren't going to leave, smiled and said, would you like to come in? The ladies accepted the offer and walked into Millicent's apartment. Please don't mind the mess, Millicent said. I had the count over yesterday, and I guess we had a little too much fun. That might explain the headache, Tina said, indicating an empty bottle on the floor. Millicent laughed mirthlessly. Nothing gets by you, Tina. So you like him, the Count? Joni asked, giving Tina a warning look that reminded her that they were there to make up with Millicent, not get into another fight. Oh, yes, he's so charming and complimentary. I had helped him with a stain and the way he went on about it. Did he tell you why he moved here? I mean, a Count of all people moving to our little community, said Tina. Not really, although it turns out he knows Regina. Really? How are they acquainted? Asked Joni. I'm not sure. I think he was embarrassed after he mentioned it. I assume he didn't want me to think he was name dropping. But of course, a Count would know everyone, wouldn't they? Yes, I guess they would, said Joni. Well, I have to say, if Regina's friends with a Count, it would explain why she keeps looking at him so affectionately, said Tina. Yes, I noticed that too. But he doesn't seem to reciprocate, sniffed Millicent. During our dinner date, he held my hand while we sipped our wine, and he kissed my hand when we parted. Not to mention all the fun you must have had yesterday, Tina said, winking. Ramona in apartment 23B said he was in your apartment for most of the day. Millicent frowned. You know, I can't quite remember yesterday. I only had a couple of drinks, but the Count sure does make them strong. I had to practically throw them back. I think the sugar cubes he used were stale or something. They were a little bitter. Millicent laughed. I haven't been that loopy from a drink since my sorority days. I was even seeing things. Colors looked funny. Everything was a little off. The Count sure teased me. I remember him pretending to look through my things for my sanity. He would open up a drawer and say, where's Millicent's sane deposit tea? Where would Millicent hide her sane deposit tea? Why would he be calling your sanity that? That's awfully strange, said Joni. Tina was quiet for a moment, thinking. Bitter sugar cubes, odd colors. Could the Count have drugged Millicent? Her eyes widened. Was it LSD he put in her drink? But why? Tina gasped. Millicent, do you think he might have been saying safe deposit key? Millicent laughed, then furrowed her brow. Why would he be looking for a safe deposit key? She stood up quickly, a hand to her mouth. Oh, no, oh no. Tina and Joni watched as Millicent ransacked her room. Millicent's eyes were watering, and she said with a quivering voice, he couldn't have. Oh, so you did have a safe deposit key in there? Tina asked. Millicent turned to her. No one must ever find out what's in that safe deposit box. It's a matter of life and death. What are we going to do? To be continued.
Episode 14. Regina woke, her body aching. Before she opened her eyes, she realized something wasn't right. Her head was throbbing and her arms were stiff. There was something tight and rough binding her wrists together. She had trouble swallowing because someone had stuffed a huge mass of fabric into her mouth as a gag. She opened her eyes and she commanded herself, but everything was so blurry. She remembered arriving at the hotel bar to meet the Count, who never showed up. She had waited until she finally had to admit he wasn't going to show up. She put the hotel key in her purse and left the bar to return to the lobby and see if she could get a refund for the room. She remembered walking along the side of the hotel, hearing footsteps gaining on her, and turning around only to feel something heavy hit her on the head. She tried to move her arms, but they were tied too tightly behind her back. Her legs were also tied to the feet of a hotel room's chair. She couldn't even kick them out an inch. She tried to scream for help, but all that came out was a muffled moan. Maybe she could wiggle the chair to the corner of the desk she saw through the rope. But as she tried to lift her body and leverage the chair to her left, she tipped dangerously. It was no use. If she fell, she was afraid she would singe herself even further. Not mention the great sense of helplessness she would feel when whoever did this, you heard the sound of a metal sliding into place. The click of a lock disengaged, and the door began to swing open. Into the room stepped someone she hadn't expected to see again, in this lifetime at least, a small figure with jet black hair and bangs. Someone who was supposed to be dead. "Ah, I'm happy to see you're awake," said Chef Maxine, removing her sunglasses and hat. "I must be stronger than I thought to have knocked you out that long. Hopefully you're not concussed." Chef Maxine gave her a mocking expression of fake sympathy. Regina tried to scream again and began frantically to wiggle her arms back and forth in a vain attempt to loosen the ropes binding her. "Surprise," Maxine said, laughing. "Oh, give it up, Regina. It's no use. Those are grade A sailor knots. And even if you could scream through the gag, there's no one ridden motel who would hear you or care. I would really have thought the Count would have had better taste. But then what would you expect him to spend on a side piece?" Of relief, then looked up, narrowing her eyes as she tried to see if there were any telltale signs that this person was not who they claimed to be. But it was
Hey,
Maxine,
Joe.
all right down to that big mole right beneath it. Yes?
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Your network is really, really choppy. And so it's cutting in and out. Do you want to try and sign off and come back on? I'm going to let Howard continue reading your chapter until we can get you guys a better signal, but we can't really understand you right now. I'm sorry.
I was doing so well too.
You were. You really, really were. I promise. It's just the connection is bad and we're having a hard time understanding.
Okay.
So maybe if you just go ahead and sign off and come back on, it might be better. Aw.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
I'm just going to back up just a little bit, and then that way, whenever she comes back on, hopefully she can pick up where she left off. So as Regina racked her brain for some way out of this, she heard the sound of metal sliding into place, the click of a lock disengaged, and the door began to swing open. Into the room stepped someone she hadn't expected to see again, in this lifetime at least, a small figure with jet black hair and bangs, someone who was supposed to be dead. "Ah, I'm happy to see you're awake," said Chef Maxine, removing her sunglasses and hat. "I must be stronger than I thought to have knocked you out that long. Hopefully you're not concussed." Chef Maxine gave her a mocking expression of fake sympathy. Regina tried to scream again and began frantically to wiggle her arms back and forth in a vain attempt to loosen the ropes binding her. "Surprise," Maxine said, laughing. "Oh, give it up, Regina. It's no use. Those are grade A sailor knots. And even if you could scream through the gag, there's no one in this flea-ridden motel who would hear you or care. Would really have thought the Count would have had better taste, but then what would you expect him to spend on a side piece?" Okay, it looks like our Joe, y'all are back.
I'm back.
Okay, you want
You
to?
want me
So
to
you just
start?
yes, ma'am. Yeah, the paragraph
Start.
Chef Maxine walked.
Okay. Chef Maxine walked over to Regina and removed the gag. Regina breathed a sigh of relief, then looked up, narrowing her eyes as she tried to see if there were any telltale signs that this person was not who they claimed to be. But it was Maxine, all right, right down to the big mole right beneath her left eye. "Maxine, what are you on earth? Why am I tied up?" "Oh, I think you know, Regina dear. You're going to be very, very sorry for all you've done." "But you died. We saw them pull your head out of the soup pot. You were dead." "Well," said Chef Maxine, "obviously you were wrong. I tried to get your attention before all of this got out of hand, but you ignored me. So now you've left me no choice but to make an executive decision and eliminate you and the Count." "No, please, Maxine, it wasn't me. You have to know that I had nothing to do with it. I heard you didn't even shed a tear when they wheeled my body out. Is that true?" "No, of course not. I was so upset. We all were. And yet, only a day later, you arrived here to meet up with a lover and a resident. It's very unethical for someone who eventually wants to leave the state's Department of Senior Services. What would the governor say? The Count is aware of my ambition. He's a consenting adult." "Oh, I bet he's consenting all right. Between you, his wife, and that pretty Millicent, he's got his hands full," Maxine laughed. "Really, I'd be doing him a favor getting rid of you." "No, I can help you. I know all the Count's secrets." Maxine raised an eyebrow. "Really? Like what?" "Untie me and I'll tell you," Regina said. "The Count, he's working on something big, which is, I'm not sure. He was going to tell me last night. If you let me go, I can talk to him and find out." "You're lying. I know you and the Count are up to something," Maxine raged. "I don't need you to help me. No one needs you." And with that final proclamation, Maxine grabbed the gag that had been stuffed in Regina's mouth and unfurled it, revealing it to be her Shady Bluff apron. She grabbed both ends of it, wrapped the fabric around Regina's neck, and began to tighten. Maxine cackled as Regina turned blue. Regina tried to breathe, but it was no use. She looked up to see that beauty mark under Maxine's eye was peeling off her face. Finally, unable to breathe, her body gave up and everything went black. Maxine stepped back and wiped sweat off her forehead. Regina's body would need to be disposed of, but she would need help with that. Luckily for her, Shady Bluff was full of people with terrible secrets they'd do anything to keep hidden. To be continued.
And that brings us to our very end. What an exciting story. Woo! And I just want to say a very special thank you to our readers today, Donna, Lisa over at Stowe, Joe and Barb. Thank you all. And Howard, thank you so much for putting it all together. You're a fantastic editor. But most of all, the folks at our communities who have been writing the stories and coming up with the ideas, you guys are really knocking it out of the park. So keep up the good work. And we haven't set a date for our next reading, but once we do, we will fill you in, and we hope to see you guys there. And don't forget, if you're on Facebook, check out the Facebook group for The Old and the Beautiful. All right. So thank you everybody for being here today. Bye.
Well,